Well, I appreciate this is a little unusual topic for this group, but it is important. And I think there's certainly a tendency for us to procrastinate on this kind of thing. Just by way of a very quick review, I've been a lifelong numismatist, but before I retired, I was a financial planner and philanthropic advisor, which means I helped individuals and families accomplish their investment, estate, and philanthropic goals. As was originally said, there comes a time in all our collector lives when, after decades of accumulating, a fantastic collection and one that might be surprisingly valuable, what now? How do we dispose of this collection properly and thoughtfully? And so that's what this presentation, I'm not advancing. I had a little technical problem. Sorry, guys, hang on. Let's try that again. Oh, sorry. Apologize. Okay. This is not intended to be tax advice. What it's intended to do is provide some detailed concepts that you consider and think about that may make sense with all or portion of your collection. Everybody's personal financial situation is different. Everybody's family situation is different. And then, of course, you lay on top of that, all the states have different rules and regulations. So if you've got a collection that really has significant value, you do want to work with an estate planner, tax advisor, something along those lines. One of the nice things about all the kind of the rules and regulations I'm going to talk about is it applies to all collectibles, everything from coins to sports memorabilia, even fine art. So it kind of covers the waterfront. I thought a good way to get your attention tonight would be to start with kind of the worst case scenarios. These are the absolute worst things you would want to see happen to your collection after you're gone. And I'm calling these numismatic nightmares. I've got 6 of them, although there may be more. The first one is that your heirs end up only getting melt value or bullion value for your collection. They take it to the wrong place, they get the wrong information. The second nightmare, and this is probably applicable if you've got currency or collection of Washington quarters. I know you guys are mostly do tokens and metals, but the items are spent. It gets into the wrong person's hands, and some of the stuff is actually spent, so you don't even get bullion value. The third nightmare, if you will, is your collection becomes a future hoard. And I don't mean that in a good way. You've done such a good job of hiding your collection to keep it safe, and something unexpectedly happens to you, and nobody knows where your coins are. The fourth nightmare, which is kind of tied to the first and second, is that your collection ends up in entirely the wrong hands. This can happen because of divorce. It can happen because of remarriage. It's not something you have total control over. And typically, when this occurs, it ends up in the hands of someone who has no appreciation of the historical value of your collection, doesn't have the patience to dispose of it properly. And I think an important element here is the more out of the mainstream your collection is, or the more esoteric. Maybe if someone collects errors or, tokens and metals to a lot of people are very out of the mainstream. It increases the likelihood of someone ending up with it who simply doesn't know what they've got or what's in front of them. The fifth nightmare, if you will, and this can happen to us whether we're alive or gone, and that is we get an unwelcome and unexpected letter from the IRS. And I think we've all been reading that the IRS is getting more funding. They're getting more proactive. There's going to be more audits. Technology allows them to be more and more, I guess, invasive of our transactions. And so it's really important to not inadvertently forget to report things because it can really come back to bite us. And it underscores the need for tax planning. So when you do liquidate your collection, if you do that, you do it in the most tax efficient way possible. And then lastly, is the whole issue of privacy. This hypothetical newspaper headline I have down at the bottom left, that would probably be, if there was such a person as Betty Jenkins, that would be her worst nightmare, because it inadvertently puts a target right on her back. And the home invasion issue is a serious one, and it goes far beyond just taking the coins. I mean, people get killed. So the privacy issue is something to really consider as we go through this. So the way I thought I'd address this is to basically go through the 5 ways that you can dispose of your collection and talk about the pros and cons of each, but some of the nuances and some of the tax implications. Because addressing this is a way to avoid those nightmares. And of course, the good news is, this is not an all or none proposition. You can use all or some of these approaches for various portions of your collection. And the first is to sell your coins during your lifetime. The second is to gift the coins, give them away to friends or family during your lifetime. The third is to gift the coins through your estate or your will. The fourth is to donate some of the coins or all to a charitable organization during your lifetime. And then fifth is to do that, to donate coins to a charitable entity through your estate. So looking at the first, selling the coins during your lifetime can be really advantageous. It relieves your family from the burden of doing that. And if they're not familiar with numismatics, that can be stressful. The other thing is, you know the area that you collect better than anybody else. And so you're going to know which dealers to work with. You're going to know which auction houses to work with if that's the approach, which means you're probably going to get a better price than your heirs if they have to do this task. And the other thing, of course, is you may want, or you may actually need the funds that are currently tied up in your collection. The one negative to this approach, of course, is if you bought the items a long time ago, or they've appreciated significantly, you may have significant tax implications from the sale of the coins. And I'll get into that in more detail. You guys are pretty knowledgeable, so I'll try and go through this pretty quickly, but there's kind of 3 methods to sell them during your lifetime. One is to work with coin dealers. And you're going to get fast payment. There's dealers today that can absorb even the largest collections, and dealers that specialize in whatever you tend to specialize in. And a lot of dealers now will sell things on consignment, which can be kind of a win-win. The flip side of that is that obviously you're going to get more of a wholesale price. Dealers are incredibly important to the marketplace. We want them to maintain a living and stay in business. So, you're going to get a wholesale price more or less. There's also the potential for cherry picking. They may not want all your collection. They may want only the very best, or maybe the things that they only specialize in. And if you don't have a specific dealer or dealers in mind, it can be kind of logistically challenging to get bids from a whole bunch of different dealers for your collection. The second method is, and it's certainly the most efficient from our standpoint of time, is to consign them to an auction company. And obviously the biggest benefit there is they have a direct vested interest in getting the highest price possible for your coins or for your collection. And so they're marketing them to who they think will be the best purchaser for those coins. And a lot of auction companies specialize. The other thing, and sometimes people forget this, is the auction company's terms are always negotiable. And your main auction companies, whether it's Heritage or Stax or Great Collections, they range between 0 and 10% for a seller's fee. But those are completely negotiable. I've sold through a number of different auction companies, and if they want your material, it's not that difficult to get to the 0%. And I'm told, I haven't experienced this personally, but if you've really got a nice collection and they really want it, you can even squeeze out and get a little bit of the buyer's fee. And some of the bigger auction companies can provide advances against what they expect to get for your coins, although that's, there's a finance charge, but that is available. The one negative of that, of course, is the time element. From the time you consign your coins to the time you get your check in hand, that can be 2 to 3 months. And if they're trying to aggregate your collection with other similar items, there may not be an appropriate auction for 4 or 5 months. So it can take a while to get all your money. This last element, as your coins must qualify, has become less of a problem because of the internet. Auction houses have become much more democratized, if that's the right word. You've got some that still focus on the high-end items like heritage and stacks, but you got others that their business model can take almost anything, like great collections. So there's really good auction companies for whatever the price range of your collection. And then the third method is to sell the coins yourself. On eBay, on Etsy, on whatnot. There's a whole lot of internet platforms to do that. You're going to get retail, or sometimes above retail. The payment's fast, through PayPal or whatever. And those can be great outlets for maybe less valuable items, for really common items, almost bullion type items. The challenge is that if you're not already doing it, it can kind of be an administrative and logistical burden you don't want to take on. If you're already doing it, that's great. If you think that'll be your new hobby, is liquidating your coins on eBay, that's great too. But a lot of people just don't want to deal with it. And then you may have items that simply don't sell. If you don't have an auction format and you just set them as a fixed price, they may sit there for a long time before they sell. Now, I mentioned the tax implications, everybody's favorite topic, I know. If you've held coins for under 12 months, any taxable gains you report are taxed as capital gain, or excuse me, as ordinary income. If you've held them longer than 12 months, they're taxed as capital gains. Now, in theory, collectibles, the maximum capital gains rate for collectibles is 28%. But in reality, you can pay lower, 10 to 15%, depending upon your income, but you can also pay higher. One thing is, if your income is high enough, you'll get the joy of paying the 3.8% Medicare excise tax. And you guys are all, I think most of you are residents of California. You've got a state capital gains tax anywhere to 1 to 13%. So the challenge is you can be paying upwards of 40% for capital gains on coins that have appreciated significantly. And it kind of underscores that need to do tax planning if you're going to liquidate a significant collection. Now, the question that comes up is, well, what about losses? I got a lot of losses on coins. Can I deduct those? If the IRS considers you a collector, no, you cannot deduct losses or carry them forward. But if the IRS considers you an investor, you can deduct losses. The challenge is that the IRS's default is that if you own collectibles, you are therefore a collector. And their primary criteria is, are you primarily buying coins for the enjoyment, and you're a collector, or are you primarily buying coins to profit, which makes you an investor? If you think you're an investor first, you want to be able to demonstrate basically investor behavior, and that is, operate like a business, detailed records, maybe have them insured, store them in a safe deposit box, occasionally sell. Even Warren Buffett occasionally sells. So again, if you want to be considered a collector or an investor, you need to operate in that fashion. And most of us are collectors. One quick aside on the taxes is that some of us have bought items, decades ago, and really don't have any recollection of what the price is. I'm told that the IRS will accept old red books or old auction catalogs if you're looking to set a cost basis for a significant collection you're selling. Okay, let's look at the second method, and that is you gift the coins during your lifetime. You give them away. And one of the advantages right off the bat is you know who they're going to go to because you're literally essentially handing them to them. The other thing, which isn't financial, is that you're able to mentor the person who receives. So if you give them to kids or grandkids, that gives you time to coach them about this collection that you've got. And it also allows you to receive their gratification for making this gift. And again, those aren't financial, but it can be really meaningful. You remove them from your taxable estate. I'll touch upon that. And if you do have a large estate and you're worried about gift taxes, there is the annual gift tax exemption, which is $17,000 a year, and with your spouse, it's $34,000. So you can gift a lot of your collection away without tax implications, even if you were at that high level. And of course, there's privacy. Gift coins to somebody, your collection to someone, no one needs to know who it's going to or what it's worth. The negatives of that, of course, are the cost basis carryover. Even if you bought something back in the 70s, when you gift it to someone, they inherit your cost basis. So if they do ever sell it and report those gains, they're going to have to use your very old cost basis on the collection. And the dominion and control element is that if you give it to somebody, there's no strings attached. If the IRS considers a real gift, you can't still kind of call the shots on what's done with the collection. And I mentioned the potential gift tax. Again, I'll touch upon that more. That's not something most of us have to worry about. All right, the other element, and this is probably the most common, and that is you gift the coins, but you do it after you're gone. You do it through your estate. And I put a big star by this first element because it's the most advantageous financially, and that is the step up in cost basis. No matter how long ago you got the coins, if you're giving them through your estate, they are revalued at your date of death. And so you have a much higher cost basis. You can still specify the recipient. You can provide very written details and guidelines for them. There is a potential privacy concern that I'll get to when you're giving something through your will. The other thing is your heirs may get a step down in basis. If you've got coins that have materially declined, their new cost basis is going to be the value of your date of death. So, and that may have declined. You're not, it's difficult to enjoy someone's appreciation when you're gone. So if you give to someone through your estate, again, you don't get a chance to mentor them. You don't get a chance to receive their appreciation. And you may have potential estate or inheritance tax issues. Now, I want to touch upon this. This is something most of us don't have to worry about. I certainly don't. In 2023, your estate has to be worth more than 12.9 million, and combined with your spouse, 25.8 million, to start having federal estate tax due on it. That's a pretty high bar. However, in 2025, that falls back to around 6 million. So it's still pretty high. The thing that you Californians don't have to worry about, but a lot of us in other states do, is that there's a lot of states that also have an estate tax. And those are always much, much lower than the federal level. So for example, in Oregon and Massachusetts, their state estate tax starts at $1 million. And you start thinking about what's happened to real estate over the last 10 years, what's happened to securities. That captures a lot of people. Just for point of clarification, an estate tax is taxed on the overall estate, usually before distributions are made to heirs. The estate is taxed. The inheritance tax is taxed on individuals after they've received assets out of your estate. So that's the two differences. If you're going to pass on parts of your collection or all of it through your estate, there's some pretty basic recommendations. And the first is to keep a very detailed inventory. Keep it as current, keep it as detailed as possible, because that's going to make it so much easier for your heirs, whether they sell it, whether they insure it. That really is helpful. And keep multiple copies of it. The second piece of advice is to have detailed written instructions. Where is it located, unless you want your collection to become a hoard? Specify what dealers or auction companies that you're recommending your heirs sell through, if they're going to be selling them. And don't forget to include what all of us would never even think you'd have to mention, and that is real basics. Like, don't take the coins out of the plastic holders and polish them. Okay, I mean, none of us would even think of mentioning that, but if they go to somebody who's not familiar with numismatics, you never know. Update the inventory and the instructions on, annually or periodically. And one other thing, when most of us think about the value of our collection, when we do think about that, we tend to think about retail. I mean, I think it's human nature. You think about the higher value. But if you're going to give to your kids or grandkids, and you think they may end up selling a lot of them, they're not going to get the retail value. They're going to probably get more of a wholesale value. And so the key is, if you're trying to divide things up equitably among different assets in your estate, bear in mind that if they're going to sell them, they probably won't get retail value, they'll get wholesale. Okay, well, I mentioned privacy, and there is a potential privacy issue when you're giving things through your will. When your will goes through the probate process, which is kind of the administrative legal process for settling an estate, your will becomes a public document. People can literally go on the internet and read your will. So if you had a sentence like this in there, your daughter might not be too happy, because you've even given them her maiden name. So it's really easy to track her down if somebody had bad intentions. The solution to that is to pass coins. And I should first say, most states have a limit under which your estate doesn't have to go through probate. So most of you in California, if your estate is worth less than $150,000, it will not go through probate. But if it's worth more, you have this issue. There's a couple good ways around this to where you can pass your collection to your heirs without it going through your will. The first is what's called a personal property memorandum. And this is just a list of non-titled tangible assets, coins, fine art, personal property, that you can pass in this separate document. Doesn't need to be done by an attorney, although I would certainly recommend you start with that. Doesn't have to be witnessed, doesn't have to be notarized. And it's basically, you sign it and date it saying who you want these things to go to. There's 30 states that accept this. California's one, as is Washington, where I live. You need to reference this in your will. You want to have detailed descriptions. It makes sense to store a copy of this document with your will. And again, it just needs to be, you can handwrite it, you can type it, you just need to sign and date it. Again, I would, if you're thinking of going that route, at least get it set up with an attorney would be my recommendation. And these are the 30 states that accept personal property memorandums. And again, that totally circumvents the will. The other method, and it's interesting, I see a lot of higher end collectors do this, and that is you set up a living trust. You set up a trust during your lifetime. And for the issues of privacy, you make this a revocable living trust. And it's actually pretty straightforward. The collector sets up this trust with an attorney, transfers the coin ownership into the trust, and then upon your demise, the coins are distributed as your written instructions are. The fact that it's revocable means you can change it at any time. Now, because it's revocable, from a tax standpoint, it's treated just as if it was not in the trust. Your heirs get a step up in basis, the cost basis. It's considered part of your taxable estate. But from a privacy standpoint, because this is a separate entity, no one needs to know what's in there, the value, or who it goes to. So you maintain that privacy. The fourth element method is to donate all or a portion of your coins to a charitable organization. Obviously, the main reason to do this is to support an organization or cause which you deeply care. That could be your church, your alma mater, could be the local YMCA, or a numismatic organization. And there's some tax advantage to this, but obviously the real main reason you would want to do this is to support an organization. By doing that, you can totally eliminate any capital gains you might have embedded in the collection. You're going to remove those coins from your taxable estate if you're worried that down the road your estate might be subject to taxation. And if you itemize your deductions, you can get a potential charitable tax deduction for your income taxes. And also, I mean, I don't know how charitably inclined you guys are, but if you're going to give to charity, it's usually nicer to do it while you're alive, so you can see the impact of your gift and be recognized. The question, of course, is, will they want your coins? Will they accept them? Most charitable organizations have what's called gift acceptance policies. And they primarily do this so they don't, accept real estate and then find out 20 years later there's a toxic dump there and they got a bunch of liability. With coins, the issue is going to be, are they concerned that because they don't know anything about coins, is it worth what the appraiser says it's worth? Or is it going to eat up a ton of staff time in dealing with it? Are they going to have to hire experts? That's their concern. But there really is a good solution is if you're inclined to maybe contribute to a charitable group, and that is you can contribute to them and then volunteer to help them liquidate them in the best way possible. It's not going to eat up any of their staff time. They're going to get the best possible price, and you're supporting an organization that you really care about. So it's really a win-win. Now, I mentioned the capital gains, and I don't totally walk you through this, but if a collector is thinking of making a significant gift to a charitable organization, and he or she can either give cash from the sale of, coins, or give them the coins, if there's capital gains embedded in those coins, it's obviously advantageous to donate the coins because the charitable organization pays no capital gains tax. And in this example, if somebody was selling a collection and the net value was $250,000, if the collector had paid that federal tax rate of 28%, the charity would only net $216,000. These are large gifts, I grant you. But if this collector was able to donate the coins, the charity could sell them, and the charity would have the full $250,000 to work with. Of course, the question that will come up if somebody's seriously thinking about this is, okay, am I going to be able to deduct, from a tax deduction standpoint, the fair market value or the cost basis? And of course, it depends. First, you need to be itemizing your deductions in order to qualify. But if the charitable organization, if you've held the coins more than a year, and somehow the coins can be tied in with that organization's charitable function. So like the American Numismatic Association, the Tokens and Metal Society, American Numismatic Society, obviously those all qualify because that's tied in with their charitable function. But if you've got something that a museum might be able to use, or an education facility can use to kind of demonstrate something through history or art, and they kind of attest that they're not going to sell it within 3 years, then you can deduct the fair market value for those coins. The one exception here, and this is one of the few breaks that the IRS gives, is that charitable function aspect. It doesn't apply if you're donating strictly, totally bullion coins, run-of-the-mill maple leaf, Krugerrand, stuff like that. In this instance, the IRS considers those like currency, and so none of those requirements are an issue with true absolute bullion type gifts. If you've got individual items worth more than 5,000, you need a qualified appraisal. There's forms to fill out, but the key here is if you are thinking of making a gift to a charitable organization, sit down with their development director or somebody from their fundraising committee and explain what you'd like to do. They will help you with the administration. They'll help you with the forms. They'll make it as easy as possible for you. Now, obviously, they can't give you tax advice, but they can help you with all the administrative burden to make it so it's not overly complex. And I won't go into all the qualified appraisal issues. Again, if you're working with a charitable organization, they will help you with all this kind of stuff. And getting a qualified appraisal in numismatics is easy because we've got such a developed marketplace for a collectible. One of the other elements is, depending upon your income, if you give a very large gift to a charitable organization, you may not be able to absorb all that charitable deduction in 1 year, because there are limits on how much you can deduct. The good news is you can carry that forward. You can use that charitable deduction up to 5 years. And also, if you're inclined to make a major gift to a charitable organization, that's where some planning might come into play. Because if you really want to do that, maybe within those 5 years is a time to, take a larger than normal distribution from your IRA or your 401k or something to help offset some of those that charitable deduction. So it's an opportunity to do some planning, again, if you've got a significant collection. Okay, the fifth element, and this is, giving coins away to a charitable organization after you're gone through your estate. And this has the same advantages where you're supporting an organization, you remove them from your taxable estate, but most people will recommend that if you're able to, it's a lot more gratifying to give the coins while you're alive. You can see the impact of your gift, and the you're alive so they can thank you. It's tough to get thanked when you're gone. I won't go into all this, some of this more complex thing. I explained the trust. Again, if you've got a significant collection, there's a lot of strategies to where you can minimize the taxes. So to conclude, I know you're waiting for that. I think if you're really the key in all of this, if you don't remember any of this, is to prepare today. We've all had friends, family, relatives who have passed away very unexpectedly, very quickly. And you want to have a plan in place. You may know that you're going to give your collection to your grandkids, but if it's not written down and something happens, anything goes. The second thing is to simplify your holdings. If you've been collecting for a long time, you've probably got, I had a lot of odds and ends that really aren't your core focus. A friend of mine said, and I don't know if it's original, but it's a lot easier to sell one $10,000 coin than 10,000 $1 coins. So, at some point it makes sense to simplify your collection. And then most importantly, create detailed written instructions so that if you do get hit by that bus tomorrow, what you want to happen with your collection happens, and you avoid those numismatic nightmares that I referenced. If you can do those things, you really are proving yourself to be a good and wise steward, most importantly to your family, but also to the coins. And I think we all know that in the big picture, we're just the caretaker for the coins. And with that, I will stop sharing and take any questions. Are you all awake?
There we go. Thank you, Jeff. We're all muted. Yeah, that was very helpful.
Really enjoyed that, Jeff. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff.
Again, I know it's a bit dry, but it's stuff to consider.
So I had a clarification at the top. I think you said that if you experience a loss in the value of your collection or your coins, that it's not deductible.
It's not. If you're considered a collector, which the IRS considers most anybody a collector. Now, if you've got the coins in a limited partnership strictly for investment purposes, but if you're a dealer, they're deductible. Again, it's a business loss. But if you're a collector, you can't deduct it, and you can't carry it forward or anything like that.
You can't use it against your gains, in other words.
Correct. But if you had no gains that year, Jason, with a regular
No,
loss,
I know. Yeah, you could still, right.
Yeah.
No, yeah.
Yeah, you can't even net it against gains.
Right.
Oh, wow.
Well,
Congress
Thanks.
does not, Congress doesn't view collectibles as a good use of money.
well, what did
Well,
they?
I didn't say I agree.
I didn't think you agreed. Okay. Any other questions for Jeff?
I had a comment if no, or any other questions.
I have a question. Jeff,
Yeah,
so
Mike,
yeah, thank you. So you said that in 2025 the larger value of the estate is going to sunset and it's going to drop down to the federal tax, I guess that's going to drop.
it'll drop to around 6 million. It's inflation. This is the end of, I guess, Trump's tax plan. It came in 2017. At the end of 2025, it goes down to around 6 or 6 and change for an individual. Then if it's a spouse, it's 12 million. And because inflation is going to be worked in, they don't know, they don't have an exact number.
Right, thank you.
And hey, guys, I'm not a tax attorney, so double check.
Yeah. Anybody else?
So I
Did
had
you
a
have a-
comment, actually. It was on an article that,
Suzanne?
Suzanne,
go ahead.
No,
Yeah.
we're just calling you Suzanne because that's
Oh.
what the name says.
Okay. No, I was just going to comment that I'd been writing an article, and I apologize, I didn't finish it. I kind of went down a rabbit hole, but one of the aspects behind it, I was trying to discover the patterns within the patterns that were created back in the 1870s, 60s, 70s, 80s, during the, I guess, Renaissance, if you want to call it, or of pattern coin production. And part of the problems that two ex-directors of the Mint had was they couldn't get rid of their collections, and they had amassed these gigantic collections of pattern pieces. One of them was Henry Linderman, who was back in the 1860s and 70s was the director, and his collection ended up going to auction after his demise, and his part of it got seized because the Mint felt that he had taken them from their premises, clandestinely. And so after that time, the Mint director that came along after him, that actually, I think, facilitated most of the pattern manufacturing in the 1870s, a guy by the name of A. Loudon Snowden, ended up orchestrating the same kind of, another seizure in order to get out of his collection, at least in my interpretation of historical documentation and whatnot, without having to suffer the same consequence.
I love it.
That was a pattern
Hey,
seizure.
I
in
got this
1910.
stuff here. It's yours. Take it.
What's that?
I got this stuff here and it's yours. So take it now.
What's that?
No. I'm talking about him.
Oh,
telling
okay.
the feds.
No, anyway, yeah, so I'm gonna have to figure out what to do with the article, but yeah, there you go.
Cool.
well, thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Well, thank you.
you.
Thank you. Yay. We all go.